Dan RadioStyle, hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. Chapter 3 out of Your Faith is Your Fortune, the Principles of Truth. Best thing about this, and it's a really long chapter, so I'm not reading all of it. I've cut some snippets out quite a bit, but still enough to kind of give the context. But one of the most important things he talks about is shifting our consciousness, right? And he's said this before, he's saying it again, but if you want to change the way things currently are, you have to shift your consciousness. Now, in order to do that, you can't continue to think the same things that you've been thinking. You can't continue to go down that same path. You have to, like he says, reborn, but almost like shed that entire way of thinking, shed it completely, kind of try to get to this place where you can sort of come at it anew. He talks about being formless, maybe through meditation, a few things. But then from there, you rebuild this new consciousness. And then you understand that what you're seeing in the physical world is a reflection of what you're doing. But just because you see something that doesn't necessarily look like you want it to, doesn't necessarily make it bad. Sometimes things happen that bring about other things. So if you're working on doing manifestation, if you're working on bringing something forward, and some weird thing suddenly shows up in your life that seems somewhat related, let it play out. Give it the benefit of the doubt. Let it be. Because I think that's where one of the places where we screw ourselves up the worst is we look at things and say, well, it's not working, or this isn't working, or nothing's working. And then at that point, you've completely eliminated all the efforts you've done. And some people have said, well, then I start over. You don't really ever start over. First off, you're going to continue from exactly where you are, right? But again, you're having to redo work because you keep making this effort, you keep doing this imaginal work, you keep getting yourself feeling as though the feeling of the wish is fulfilled. You get yourself believing that you've already got that what you want. And then you step 15 minutes into your day and someone says, hey, can you give me 25 cents? You're like, oh, it's not money coming to me. Now it's someone asking for money. I must be doing something wrong. No. Your money's part of your consciousness. Money flows. Of course that's going to happen. So again, and that's maybe a silly example, a third party can be the same thing with someone. Maybe there's a third party and I started doing this law of attraction work and then they instantly started dating someone. Doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. I know lots of people that have gotten into short relationships, learned valuable lessons, and ended up getting away from these crazy people that they were with. Good things can come from situations that look bad. So kind of remembering that, putting our lives in that perspective, understanding that when we shift our consciousness and get ourselves to this better place, this better way of thinking, this better way of feeling, that you got to let it kind of bloom. Might pop open a little weird, maybe one of the little petals is a little burnt, whatever, the sun got it. It is what it is. It's okay. It's going to work out fine. Give it a chance to do so. So let's let Goddard get into it. And like I said, I've taken lots of paragraphs, but a number of them, and just tried to eliminate as many as I could as well. So we're just going to cover through these. So this is out of chapter 3. This is many parts of it. The Principle of Truth. When man gives up his belief in a God apart from himself and begins to recognize his awareness of being to be God, meaning when he finally realizes that his awareness of being, who he is being, is God. You're being God. When we can realize that, as did Jesus and the prophets, he will transform his world with the realization, I and my Father are one. But my Father is greater than I. He will know that his consciousness is God, and that which he is conscious of being is the Son bearing witness of God the Father. So this is realizing, again, this is a new chapter, new book, but we've talked about this. But it's that understanding that we are the Creator. It's that aspect within us that we've been bestowed that we use to decree out to the world and say, make this so. It's that component of ourself that is the Father. We're the small Father, right? We're a lowercase f, if you will. We're a small version of the Father, but we are the same thing. We're just, a smaller version. The consciousness of being is not dependent upon being anything. It preceded all conceptions of itself and shall be when all conceptions of itself shall cease to be. I am the beginning and the end, or as it says in the Bible, I am the Alpha and the Omega. That is, all things or conceptions of myself begin and end in me. But I, the formless awareness remain forever. Another aspect to consider, I believe it's in Genesis, probably the very first chapter, but he talks about in the beginning there was light, or some might say in the beginning was logos, or some might say in the beginning was the word. There's a number of ways that it comes, but ultimately they all mean the basic same thing. In the beginning, there was consciousness. There was nothing else. Everything was formless, nothing existed, but there was consciousness. And then that consciousness decided to create some stuff. And it started creating some things, and it said, oh, I'm happy with that work. Now let's create some more. And that's how creation began. It began as formless. Before there was anything physical, which how many of us look at the physical and go, well, there's proof. All right. Well, how would that have worked at the very first manifestation, right? The chicken or the egg, right? The very first manifestation before there was anything. There was nothing physical yet, but within the consciousness, physicality came. There was a decision, there was a thought, there was an image held. And that came. It formed. It became physical. And that is how reality is created. Law of attraction is not magic. It's not some sort of silly thing that somebody just made up. And if you say things just a certain way and act a certain way and behave a certain way, then this is going to happen. No. Law of attraction is talking about the way manifestation happens. Things are manifested to us in our world. Everybody has stuff happen to them. And law of attraction and all of these things are talking about how that mechanism works. Mechanism's on 100% of the time, and it's working 100% of the time. The universe is 100% of the time abundant. It's either abundantly giving you what you're asking for, or it's abundantly giving you the opposite of what you're asking for, but kind of because you keep focusing on the opposite of what you keep asking for. So, Jesus discovered this glorious truth and declared himself to be one with God, not the God that man had fashioned, for he never recognized such a God. Jesus found God to be his awareness of being, and so told man that the kingdom of God and heaven were within. To rise in consciousness to the level of the thing desired, and to remain there until such level becomes your nature, is the way of all seeming miracles. And I, if I be lifted up, I shall draw all men unto me. If I be lifted up in consciousness to the naturalness of the thing desired, I shall draw the manifestation of that desire to me. Now, again, he's bringing up a few things here. One, the consciousness, raising the consciousness to the level that you desire, where this thing is that you don't have, be it money, be it wealth, be it these people that you want to be with, raising your consciousness to the place where you have that already is really step one. Then feeling natural about it, which means it can't be some sort of weird impossibility or something I can't reach or some unobtainium, as they might say, right? It has to be something that you believe is possible. Now, once you do that, well, everything is manifested to you. Like every desire you have starts to come your way. So he continues, no man comes unto me save the Father within me draws him. And I and my Father are one. My consciousness is the Father who draws the manifestation of life to me. The nature of the manifestation is determined by the state of consciousness in which I dwell. I am always drawing into my world that which I am conscious of being. If we have some sort of belief that things always happen a certain way, some sort of belief that every time I get close, it's hard to do, some sort of belief that why is it that the negative things are easier to manifest, some sort of belief that every time I get close, the rug gets yanked out from under me, or conversely, some sort of truth or belief that things always seem to work out. Everything seems to happen for a reason. Everything seems to always work out in my life according to plan. I am always in the divine time and the right place, always. I always get effects shown to me about how I'm on the right path and that I'm always in exactly where I should be time-wise. You can have a belief that things always seem to work out, that all of my manifestations are coming my way, or you can have a belief of the opposite. Now, many of us look at the world around us to decide what belief we should hold. Those of us that are masters, those of us that understand the way law of attraction works, we understand it's not what I see, but what I'm thinking and doing and saying. It's my consciousness. It's what's going on inside of me that causes that out there to become what I'd like it to be. If that out there is not resembling what I'd like it to be, then I go back to in here and I look at what's going on. Well, I have been saying how that traffic light's been red a bunch. Well, no wonder it keeps turning red, because usually it's green. Okay, so then I instantly change it. That light's always green. I see that light's green every day. It's green every day. It's not that I'm saying an affirmation. It's realizing in my mind that I have been talking about how this light tends to be red, and I believed it. I was putting that out. My consciousness was of the nature that this light turns red. By shifting my consciousness to realizing that it's turning green and knowing that's all I'm doing, I'm not saying an affirmation. I'm literally changing my beliefs. I'm changing my thinking. I'm changing my consciousness, because I know by what I'm thinking, saying, and doing, I'm causing the outer world to change. By knowing that I'm causing the outer world to change, I realize, okay, that's what I'm putting out there. And oddly, that's what happens. It's not magic. It's just a knowing. It's a knowing and using the tools that we all have consciously, and realizing that if I'm having some sort of trouble getting something to manifest in my life, it's not because I'm doing the techniques wrong. It's not because I'm believing wrong. It's because there's something that's blocking that flow from you. Something that's blocking that consciousness. And ultimately, unless you want to get coaches and, pay someone to help you figure it out, ultimately, if you pay attention to what you're doing and saying and thinking, you'll find it. Things will pop up and you'll be like, oh, my God, it's like the video I did recently about enhancing your income. When you finally see people do things that you would normally go, oh my God, I would never think to spend $500 on dinner. Well, it's that type of thinking that's keeping you from being able to spend $500 on dinner. You want more income. More income would imply that you're able to spend $500 on dinner. So manifest a $500 dinner. How awesome is that you go to a dinner, spend $500 and realize, I just spent $500 on dinner, and that's not going to put me in the poorhouse. It's a different way of thinking. So I continue. If you are dissatisfied with your present expression of life, then you must be born again. Rebirth is the dropping of that level with which you are dissatisfied and rising to that level of consciousness which you desire to express and possess. You cannot serve two masters or opposing states of consciousness at the same time. Taking your attention from one state and placing it upon the other, you die to the one from which you have taken it, and you live and express the one which you are united. Man cannot see how it would be possible to express that which he desires to be by so simple a law as acquiring the consciousness of the thing desired. The reason for this lack of faith on the part of man is that he looks at the desired state through the consciousness of his present limitations. Therefore, he naturally sees it as impossible of an accomplishment. Again, looking at the way things are right now, I can't be with him because he's in a third party. Well, that's obviously going to change. Yeah, you can't be with him this very second. All right, that's a safe statement. I'll agree with you. Right this very second, he's in a relationship. She's in a relationship right now. You're right this very second. You can't have a relationship with him. Doesn't mean that tomorrow they don't break up. Doesn't mean that the day after that they call you up and say, hey, what are you doing? It's looking at our right now and going, no, I can't do it. That's the difference. It's the fact that you're paying attention to your right now and deciding that somehow indicates tomorrow. And if you keep focusing on that, it will indicate your tomorrow. But if you shift your focus or your consciousness to where you would like to go, to what you would like to experience, to your imagination, to assumptions, if you can switch your consciousness in that direction, then the old dies, withers on the vine, and the new begins anew from the point of your imaginal work. Not from yesterday, not from a minute ago, not from when they met the third party, from right the second you're doing it. That's how creation happens. One of the first things man must realize is that it is impossible in dealing with the spiritual law of consciousness to put new wine into old bottles or new patches on old garments. That is, you cannot take any part of the present consciousness into the new state, for the state sought is complete in itself and needs no patching. Energy levels of consciousness automatically express itself. This is kind of one of those situations where I hear a lot of people say, I do all these things right, but this thing's going on. What should I do? Stop paying attention to this thing that's going on. Keep doing all the things right, but stop looking at your moment right now, your real life right now. Stop looking at Instagram pictures and saying that's what tomorrow is. Stop doing that. Because every time you give that power, every time you ask me the question, I do all these things correctly, but as soon as you say but, I look at everything you say and say that is why. Everything that follows but. If you're the one that's writing that comment, think about it. I'm doing X right, I'm doing this right, I'm doing that right. But I keep noticing this thing that won't go away. I keep staring at it, and for some reason it won't go away. Why? What do I need to do to make this thing I keep staring at not go away? I keep focusing on it, and it won't go away. Stop focusing on it. Focus on something else. Come up with a hobby to maybe spend some mind cycles on that. Maybe think about things from there so you don't get too caught up in this time frame. Right? I think that's the thing that frustrates many of us. It's taking too long. When's this going to happen? Well, it happens when it happens. Keep doing it until it does. I mean, we all manifest differently. We all have our levels of doubts, our hand braking, as you might say. But ultimately, the process works the same for everybody, even when you're manifesting things you don't want. Manifesting works perfectly always. Always. What's your consciousness expecting? What is your consciousness looking for? What's your consciousness looking at? I bet you're getting a lot more of those things than what you're not looking at. And oddly, sometimes what you're not looking at is actually what you want to be looking at. And that's the big difference that so many of us made. You know, it's that standard adage that you can't put lipstick on a pig because it's still a pig. It's the same thing. You can't take bad consciousness and then somehow go, ooh, affirmation, do this, spin around in a circle, put my left foot out, left leg, right? And then bam, everything's good. No, you still got crap consciousness. You're immediately, after doing that technique, going to begin doubting yourself, doubting reality because they're still in a relationship, because there's still someone in your job, because my boss is still being mean to me. So the second you say that, you undid everything you did. You're reaffirming this, my boss is mean to me, my so-and-so's happened, this person's in a third party. You instantly reaffirm all of that. I know that's not what you want. It's not what I want. So the way around that is to keep focusing on the direction you want to go. To rise to the level of any state is to automatically become that state in expression. But in order to rise to the level that you are not now expressing, you must completely drop the consciousness with which you are now identified. It's what everything happens this way. It's always like this. It's what you identify with. Until your present consciousness is dropped, you will not be able to rise to another level. Do not be dismayed. This letting go of your present identity is not as difficult as it might appear to be. The invitation of the scriptures, to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord, is not given to a select few. It is a sweeping call to all mankind. The body from which you are invited to escape is your present conception of yourself with all of its limitations, while the Lord with whom you are to be present is your awareness of being. To accomplish this seemingly impossible feat, you take your attention away from your problem and place it upon just being. You say silently but feelingly, I am. Almost like a aum kind of thing. I am. You can do it in a frequency and you will literally feel it vibrate in your body. Just the two I ams I said right now, and then even me talking about it, I've got goosebumps right now. It's a very powerful way of pulling yourself out of your current consciousness. So do not condition this awareness, but continue declaring quietly, I am. I am. Simply feel that you are faceless and formless and continue doing so until you feel yourself floating. Or at least you'll get yourself to a place where you really don't feel your surroundings, right? So make sure you're not in a freezing cold room or a torrential waterfall falling on you and trying to work on your next level of manifestation or next level of meditating. That's not what we're going for here. Make it as easy as possible to put yourself in a place where you can actually get yourself to such a place and you're I-aming yourself, just saying it constantly inside because you're focused on that, you're focused on your breathing. And then eventually, you're able to kind of separate yourself from your current consciousness. From that point, you can rebuild a new consciousness. This wonderful experience of rising and floating is the signal that you are absent from the body or problem and are now present with the Lord. In this expanded state, you are not conscious of being anything but I am. You are only conscious of being. That's key. You're conscious of being. You're not deciding what you're being. You're just being. You're being nothing. You're being I am. You're being aware. You're being consciousness. You're getting your consciousness under control. From there, as you claim and feel yourself to be the thing desired, you are crystallizing this formless liquid light that you are into the image and likeness of that which you are a conscious being. Now that the law of your being has been revealed to you, begin this day to change your world by revaluing yourself. Too long has man held the belief that he is born of sorrow and must work out his salvation by sweat of the brow. God is impersonal and no respecter of persons. So long as man continues to walk in this belief of sorrow, so long will he walk in a world of sorrow and confusion. For the world in its every detail is man's consciousness crystallized. Before man can transform his world, he must first lay the foundation of understanding. I am the Lord. Man must know that this awareness of being is God. Until this is firmly established so that no suggestion or argument can shake him, he will find himself returning to the slavery of his former belief. If ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins. Unless man discovers that his consciousness is the cause of every expression of his life, he will continue seeking the cause of his confusion in the world of effects, and so shall die in a fruitless search. This last paragraph is key. If you don't quite understand that the world is created by your consciousness, and I say world not meaning some flea 65 million or 1,000 miles away from here on some other part of the planet, I'm talking about your life, what you experience. I'm not saying that this means there's no homeless people in the world. I'm saying, I don't know, are you one of the homeless people or are you constantly around homeless people? Okay, then yes, it's a lot more prevalent in your life. If you're someone that pretty much almost never sees homeless people, then no, they're not really in your life, are they? Your consciousness and what you experience is your world. Whether or not you experience things that other people experience in their world, I don't know. Sometimes we have similarities, sometimes we don't. Some people tend to have worlds where everything just seems to work out for them. And some people always seem to talk about struggles, hardships, and all these different things. And gosh, golly, look at that. They seem to have a harder time with it. It is our consciousness that does the creating. The second we figure that is the second we change our life. And until we do that, until we constantly look at what's going on in the outer world as the truth, then we will continue to chase this fruitless hope. We will continue to manifest without any real happiness. We won't get the thing that we're after. Reason being, because we keep focusing on how we don't have it. And the very nature of doing that continues to keep you in lack. Abundantly keeps you in lack. By changing that around, by realizing that I'm creating what's happening to me, by owning that and knowing that, and knowing that every single thing that happens to you is 100% created by you. Even if someone else says something that hurts your feelings, you created that situation. And your internal dialogue and sensitivities were able to take whatever was just said and allow that to hurt you. I'll say there's a big difference between someone I care about telling me I'm fat and someone I don't even know telling me I'm fat. There's a huge difference in the way I'll react with those two statements, period. And that's really kind of one of the things we've got to realize. Who are we keeping around us that's telling us stuff? Who are we insisting is telling us the truth when it comes to what's rationally happening around us. Hey, I'm just trying to be rational. I'm just trying to be honest. I'm just being a realist. That's not how you make anything new. If something's never been created, the realist is not going to create it because they can't see it. They have no vision. They have no way to make something that's not here be here. But us as creators, us being conscious of the way manifestation works, aka law of attraction, aka the secret, the way these things work is we create what happens to us. And when we really appreciate that, when we own that, that is when your entire life begins to soar. Because everything that happens is up to us. And if something's happening that I don't like, then call for something else to happen. Come up with a better idea. Come up with a better approach. Come up with a better situation. Assume that this can get better. And you will find that it does. Dan Radio Style.